How do meme games keep breaking records, making millions of dollars, and even surpassing AAA titles like Call of Duty? Why are gamers loving these small games littered with bugs versus AAA titles with ginormous budgets and teams? Is there a secret recipe for success that they all have in common? Maybe, and this might be a stretch, we gamers don't feel appreciated when large AAA companies release buggy games with 400 DLCs. So I analyzed 3 of the most recent titles that rose to Steam's charts and beat some of the franchises you know and love. These games were all indie games, so they were either made by one person or a small team. They were all made in a relatively short period, and they all made several millions in the first week of their launch. One of these games made $100 million, and it was made by one person. And that's not a small amount by any means. But recently there's been a game that's even more shocking. It sold $6 million in revenue in the first week of its release, over 1 million copies, and the entire game was made in 6 weeks. The studio behind this hit is Landfall Games, home to the popular Totally Accurate Battle Simulator and other top-selling games. They say it sold multiple times more copies in the first day than any of their other games. So what's the game? Well, you probably already know it. Content Warning is a co-op game where you play as these astronauts, or whatever the heck those are, and your goal is to get footage of monsters and scary things to grow your YouTube or SpookTube channel. There's no other goal except to get the footage, upgrade your equipment, and try to get the most views possible on your video. It sounds simple, but there's 2 key things that Landfall Games did to make their game go viral. Apart from it being hilarious because the enemies are buggy and outright ridiculous at times.
Oh God, he's gonna die! He's gonna die!
At the end of the run, if you survive, you return home and upload the video you and your friends recorded to the fake YouTube. You can then watch the final video of your spooky adventures, even with some fake generated comments alongside the video. But here's the genius part. You can actually save the video you recorded to your desktop, and boom, Landfall Games just created a way to market their game for free. Now, anyone can easily drag that video into Twitter, Discord, or a chat with their friends and share it. People new to the game will be curious when they keep seeing videos of it everywhere filled with laughter and screaming. Gee, this would be fun to play with friends. Let me get them to buy it. But that wasn't their only genius strategy, and they actually cheated a little bit to make their game so successful in such a little time. Because they have a standing history of popular games, they slid into Steam's DMs and asked if they could have the game be free for the first 24 hours. Now imagine you keep seeing this game on your feed and you find out it's free. People love free things, or just the idea of something exclusive with a limited time deal, like Black Friday. So what ended up happening? Well, 6 million people downloaded the game for free. Oh, but 6 million is already a lot. Doesn't that mean that no one else will buy their game once it releases? Well, that's what I thought, but no. Surprisingly, there's more than 6 million people willing to play games like these. A lot more. And with the people that got it for free, they started playing, and the word of mouth spread between their friends. Even after the game's free period ended, more people kept on buying it so they could play with their friends that had gotten it for free. There is a drawback to this method though. When the game becomes full priced, they lose all the reviews on the Steam page. And reviews are extremely helpful because they help boost the game in Steam's algorithm so it gets shown to more people. So it's almost like it was a clean slate. But it was already going full steam ahead on socials, and the lack of a few thousand reviews wasn't gonna hurt it. So what were the key elements that made them successful? Well, it's a scary co-op game with funny elements, so it's perfect for streaming. It has infinite replayability. The map is randomly generated each time, and they're constantly pushing updates for new features. Its highlights are easily shareable even if you don't stream, and they were able to make it for free for the first day, which acted like a personal marketing campaign with little drawback. But one outlier isn't enough to establish a pattern. We have to look at other games and see if there are any similarities that makes a game go viral. And are there any secrets I can use for my own indie game? A difficult precision platformer inspired by Super Meat Boy, which you can now wishlist on Steam. It helps me a lot. Let's take a giant leap into Lethal Company, a game made by a 21-year-old who previously had a decade of experience making smaller games in Roblox. Now, the game did take a little longer than 6 weeks. It took around 1 to 2 years of development, but it resulted in $100 million and more of revenue. Life-changing money, especially at that age. It even beat Call of Duty sales on their new Modern Warfare or something or whatever. I don't know, it's kind of all the same by now. Now, this game is also a co-op horror game with some elements of humor. And actually, I think that Content Warning took a lot of inspiration from Lethal Company. But this makes it easily streamable, leading it to become #1 on Twitch for a while. The big plus with co-op games in general is that it encourages other people to try it. Since you can't play alone, or you can but it's not fun, the customer itself becomes a marketing agent, telling their friends to purchase the game so they can play it together. But there's a lot of co-op games out there, so what makes this one stand out? Apart from its simplicity in objectives, infinite replayability with randomly generated maps each time, high difficulty, and ridiculous monsters, what made the game go viral was its well-done proximity chat. Instead of having access to your friend's voice all the times, like chatting on Discord, now it would fall off depending on your distance to them. And not only that, there were extra effects applied to the voice depending on the room you were in or the ground you were walking through, adding an extra intensity and realism to every moment when you suddenly realize you can't hear your friend anymore.
Queso's dead, Queso's dead, Queso's dead, Queso's dead, Queso's dead.
But there are other ways to communicate in the game, like using walkie-talkies, which provides incentives to continue exploring the deep unknowns in hopes of upgrading the team's equipment. Where are you? Over?
Railroads, over.
So let's see the key points that made it go viral. It's easily streamable because it's a co-op horror game with funny elements. It has infinite replayability, and limiting voice chat added some challenge or difficulty to each run. Now, content warning also has proximity chat, but it's not the main focus because you're encouraged to stay together to get more footage. But now we start to see some similarities arise. So what happens when we take a non-co-op game that isn't horror but also seemed to break records? Then we can draw a more concrete diagram and pinpoint what exactly makes a game go viral regardless of its genre. Only Up is a game where you go, well, up. It's difficult and provides a nice challenge for a few hours. But this game was very controversial, the art was all over the place, and it looked like the developer just used a bunch of assets and just like bunched them together with no regard to how it looked. So why did this game, out of the thousands of other well thought out, intentional, and beautiful games, go viral? Well, it's difficult and simple. Because of that, it's easily streamable. When you fall, you have to start all over again. It makes it very frustrating, but it's very funny to watch. See how it falls into place now? Even if a game takes thousands of years to develop, if no one knows about it, it basically doesn't exist. Most indie developers spend years making a game, but they don't even think about the marketing side of it or whether it's streamable. I'm not saying a game is bad if it doesn't have those qualities, but it's much harder to get the word out. And if you're trying to make a living from making games, it's kind of important to consider. But it still doesn't explain how these small games are able to outperform AAA titles which have thousands and thousands of dollars in their budget for marketing and increasing awareness. Don't get me wrong, AAA titles are performing great, as usual. But there has been negative sentiment for them recently, and some AAA titles have just missed the mark entirely. These are huge companies with revenue goals to hit. Taking the wrong turn can lead to bankruptcy. So they end up playing it safe and sticking to systems and features they know will work well and make money, most importantly. Now, this works for some time, but eventually people start to lose interest as the same thing is coming up over and over and over again. This, along with the constant DLCs, in-app purchases, and all those monetary things that they try to extract as much value from the customer, sometimes leaves a sour taste in the player's mouth. And games that are not scared of trying something new stand out in this sea of sameness. So we can see that the key to success of these seemingly worse meme games are highly streamable content that provides some sort of challenge that makes it fun to watch. Adding some unique mechanic, usually not seen in games, also lends to a wow factor. The game doesn't have to have amazing graphics, but it does have to stand out in some way, whether that be style, shapes, or contrast. As I'm making my own indie game, it's important for me to see what's popular in the industry and see what I can take away from it to add to the success of my game. I made sure that the art would pop out, simple colors and contrasts, along with a cute main character, while providing a challenge by increasing the difficulty of each level. And since the levels are small yet difficult, it makes it easy for speedrunners to pick up. But it didn't always look this way. It took weeks of iteration. If you want to see how a video game is initially developed, check out this video here and see how I made my game in a month.